All right, Nick, we've made it to the second show of Chatterbox Reds, which is an achievement nonetheless. We have a special guest in the house, Trent Rosecrans from The Athletic. I don't know about you, Nick, but I subscribed to The Athletic before it was cool. That's what I always say. I think I subscribed to The Athletic like the second week it was out. There was a guy... and Trent's going to know his name off the top of his head. Maybe I should just ask him. But there was a Georgia beat reporter I used to read all the time from, I think it was the Atlanta Journal, Seth Emerson. Maybe he was at the Atlanta Journal. I don't know where he was at. But nonetheless, I used to read him every single day. He said he was joining The Athletic, and I decided I was going to join The Athletic. But nonetheless, the Reds, as you can see on the ticker, 14-14. The old tie, the thing that Americans love, Nick. So... we didn't get a chance to see the game, obviously, but you get a chance to dive through the box score. And before I bring Trent in here real fast, how's your day going?
It's good. Hey, I enjoyed listening to the game on the radio today. I love a good 14-14 spring training game. I tell you, the Reds are the most interesting team in baseball in spring training games from like innings 7 through 9, because they like half the players. That's the guys I really want to see. So. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm about it.
All right. So without further ado, let's bring in Trent. I know that he's probably busy writing stories and doing things out in Arizona. I'm sure that I don't know if he knows this, Trent. Trent, maybe you do know it, maybe you don't. But our weather is just as good as yours, just so you know.
I don't know. Actually, I'm trying to get myself centered here. Sorry.
You're going to go to your right, or just move your camera, whichever one you choose.
There we go.
There you go.
The mic is fine. Oh, hell. There we go. Yeah, it is pouring here in Arizona. It is like you can maybe even hear it on the roof here because it's not used to it. So, yeah, and they were lucky. I know I share a house in here with a couple other guys, including Levi Weaver, who covers the Rangers. And Levi said they called his game in the 7th, and they probably should have called it in the 4th. Now, if the Reds game had been called in the 7th, it would have been like nothing. You know, it would have been we would have missed a whole lot. Yep. So I guess I'm glad they didn't.
Trent, I'll ask you.
Trent,
because go ahead, Nick. Go ahead, Nick. I'll let you take it. Go ahead. Let it rip.
You in a whole athletic house there? Is that the setup?
Yeah, me, Levi, who covers the Rangers, James Fegan, who covers the White Sox, and Fabian Aradaya, who covers the Dodgers. So kind of the West Phoenix, the west side of the Phoenix metro area are all here in one house.
All right, Trent, I'm going to ask you, maybe it's a softball question, maybe it's not, I'm not sure, but we try to be optimistic on this show. That is the main goal for the most part, and we would like to be real. It's not like we want to, pander to everything that happens that is good. But if you could shed the most optimistic thing that you felt like you've seen this spring, whether that's culture, whether that's some player, what is it to you that sticks out the most?
Yeah, I think, it's funny you bring up culture. I have a story running tomorrow about kind of the culture and some of the things they're trying to do. It's, just there's so much young talent. There are guys. It's funny. I kind of went through. I think MLB.com released their top 30 today. So what I did is I went through and I made a spreadsheet of all the top whatevers. The Athletic Keith Law did 20 in the organization. Baseball America and MLB.com both did 30. Fangraphs 46. And going through that, just the names and what was really interesting to me was that there was some consensus with the top four, and then more or less consensus with some of the others. But then it just keeps going, and you have like 50 guys there listed. It's and you would see these great differences of opinion, and ranking prospects is really hard, and that's looking into the future. It's very, very difficult. But when you have that many guys, there's talent, and there's people who are going to surprise, who are going to get better. There's people who are going to get worse, surprise in a bad way. But there are just so many players that you look. And I was talking to J.J. Cooper, who works at Baseball America, and at the winter meetings, and he was saying, yeah, 1 through 10 was pretty easy, but he's like, the difference is when you're getting guys in the 20s. He said there's like a group from say 15 to 45 or so that you could all kind of put anywhere in there and see it. It's that depth that is interesting. So it's been really fun to watch some of these young guys. Jay Allen had a great day today. Two really good hits. And then Christian Encarnacion Strand had 5 RBI in a inning. That's good. So yeah, it's been fun to listen to. And then Noelve Marte was just like hear the ball off his bat. It was a lot of fun.
A lot harder to fill out those 25 through 30 prospects than previous years where you're just throwing someone on there, huh?
Yeah, I've done that. I did that list for Baseball America 1 year. And it's tough. And I need to go back and look at it and see what I did and how I did. I'm guessing not great, but we shall see.
So, Trent, last year was well documented after the Reds made all these trades that the mood surrounding the team and the clubhouse was rough. Is it different from your perspective this year versus last year?
Very much so. Very much so. And I actually have that, like I said, I have that story running in the morning. It's looser, and I've joked with several people that, hey, I am sure that you guys are going to exceed expectations, because what so many of us are hearing is an expectation of 0-162, and I'm pretty sure they're going to win a game.
Maybe 2.
I would go upwards of. I mean, if you're putting the over-under at 6, I'm still going the over.
Well, as you've been around this franchise long enough, Trent, to know. First of all, I don't know whether or not this is a long, drawn-out question. We had a question that was sent in to us. I think it was tweeted to us, asking us where the C comes from in Trent. So I don't know. Maybe it's personal to you, or maybe it's some simple thing. I don't know. What is that?
Usually it's like depends on the question. I'll just throw it out there. I'll make something up. But the real story is we have this weird family tradition in my family that firstborn males, going back 5-6 generations or something, I'm not even sure, all the first name Charles. And every other generation goes by their middle name. So I go by Trent. My dad was Chuck. His dad was Wayne. His dad was Charles, and so forth.
Love it. All right. Well, that's relatively quick and pretty straightforward and easy. You're just carrying the tradition on. I'd hate to see the one that decides to stop that. That wouldn't be that'd be bad Thanksgiving for them, I would assume.
It was me because I have a girl.
Okay. Well, who knows?
And her name is not Charles.
All right. Fair enough. But I was going to say, you've been around this organization, the franchise, long enough to understand maybe why there's been frustration, why there's been the call to action. I think that you've heard our sentiments, maybe my sentiments before, just in regards to the ownership. And really, this show is not geared around or based around to get into the nuts and bolts of that, because at the end of the day, I'm not really sure if it matters. As soon as you start winning, then that fan base, those types of people, they come right back in droves, and that's been proven with the football team that plays in the same town. So so if we push that to the side and we just say to you, okay, as you look forward, do you feel like there's any concern from a fan base that is hugging on to some of these prospects? Is there any undue pressure? Do you ever think that exists? Do you believe in that? Because at the end of the day, a lot of this fan base, the optimistic ones, if you will, are going to assume and ask a lot of guys that have not proven themselves to do hardly anything, if anything at all, at a major league level. Do you think that's a concern, or is that just part of the deal?
Sure, but it was also a concern in, say, 2008, 2009, when you had Shea Bruce, the top prospect in baseball. You had Johnny Cueto, Homer Bailey, Joey Votto. That's, circle of life in Major League Baseball. So, yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure on a guy like Ellie De La Cruz, so many others. There was pressure last year on Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. And I think we've seen good things from those two guys as well. So it's part of the deal, and it's going to be that way no matter what they're paid. And right now, there's a lot of good prospects. They're not all going to pan out. It just doesn't happen that way. But some are. And I think that's kind of where they are in this life cycle of baseball. Again, I know a lot of people, and understandably so, the 2020 they broke it up, but we weren't talking 75 Reds. This was an 83-win team that they broke up. I mean, I just don't know that they were guaranteed to do much more. And you're going to sign Nick Castellanos? Not at that level. I think, he might be having some second thought that one as well. So, it's tough. I will say this, though. If there's one thing you can tell that they've done, Nick Krall is stuck to this plan. The one thing he talked about, we were in Pittsburgh at the end of the 2021 season. Yeah, 2021 season. I remember being in his suite there, and we were talking about stuff, and he said the one thing we cannot do, we cannot make the same mistake we made to get out of Homer Bailey's contract, where we sold off prospects, where we gave up prospects to get out of a contract. He says, I can't do that. I won't do that. And that was, Jeter Downs and am I blanking on the pitcher's name? Nick, help me out.
Josiah Gray.
Josiah Gray. Josiah Gray's been a big leaguer. Jeter Downs has as well. But when you look at that deal, it's not what those guys were, but the Dodgers then used those guys to get Max Scherzer and Mookie Betts, and the Reds did not get either Max Scherzer or Mookie Betts type production out of the guys in that deal. I mean, heck, you go back to it, and it was this, 4 players that the Reds got, and it was the fourth guy, who the self-described throw-in, who was the most valuable of those players.
See, Trent, looking at the rotation, obviously Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft are locks, assuming health. How do you see the rest of the rotation after those 3 panning out?
Yeah, I think Luke Weaver's got that spot as long as he doesn't mess up or look terrible, and he hasn't. And then there's a lot of interesting things. To me, what's more interesting than who's going to fill out that little bit of the rotation, the big difference is look at what Louisville's rotation is going to be. They're going to have an actual rotation. That they're also going to have an actual lineup, with some people who were considered to be big leaguers. That's not something they really had last year. If you go through there, I mean, oof, it was rough if you went to watch the Louisville Bats, and they should have a pretty decent team this year, and that should help. That's the sign of a system maturing and progressing. So I think that's really good because you go through, and there were times where it's just like, who can we have start last year? And that's when you get your Phillip Deals starting, and oh geez, like there's so many guys I probably can't even remember. Robert Duger, those kind of guys, they were starting because there was not that depth, and that is something that this team has built is depth.
Yeah, see, Trent, I was gonna follow up with one final question. I don't know if you've seen this or I thought I might have worn that on purpose, but at the end of the day,
Nice.
I remember talking to you for the first time we had met. I believe it was the Moeller. I don't know at this point. I forget. I think it was a GCL football game, nonetheless, at Nippert.
Yeah.
The Dogs pulled through, but outside of that fandom, just to get into you a little bit more from a Trent Rosecrans perspective, people know you from obviously following the Reds. You're not a fan, obviously, from the perspective of that's your job and you follow them closely and you do your best job to be fair. But do you have any other fandom out there that is other sports, or what's behind the curtain of Trent Rosecrans?
That's an interesting question. I don't watch a whole lot of sports on my off time. I'd given up kind of on some college football for the most part until last year. I started watching Georgia's games again. I was like, man, this defense is good. They're pretty fun to watch. And so I kept watching them. I did receive Georgia. That's why I was Georgia. And I watched the Bengals just to keep up with what's going on. I grew up a Cowboys fan. I can't tell you anything about the Cowboys. I don't even know what they finished. Don't think they made the playoffs. I don't know. Maybe they did. I really don't know.
You're just locked in. You're locked into your craft.
I'm locked into other things. If there's, I like to watch soccer, like kind of as background. I don't know anything. I don't even know how the transfer portal works.
What's the number one hobby? What's the number one hobby then? If it's not sports related, what's the number one thing that you would like to do?
Let me finish up. Sports is I do watch F1. I'd never done that till the pandemic. Never any interest in any kind of auto racing until the pandemic and the cliche got into Drive to Survive. And I watch F1. I get up, watch the races. I'll watch qualifying. I really, really enjoy it. Other than that, I do have a daughter. I love hanging out with her, doing whatever she's into at the moment. Music has always been a huge, huge thing for me. In college, I was like the entertainment editor at the student paper. I was also the sports editor at one point. Was the staff writer, wrote about music a lot at the Red and Black and at the University of Georgia. And so there's that. I also am a huge Star Wars fan, and I like to collect vintage Star Wars stuff. So yeah, there are some other things, but I still love baseball. I grew up a Kansas City Royals fan. Again, I couldn't name too many of the Royals right now because it's still spring and and almost the American League is almost like it's almost like the NHL to me. It's there and I know it and I see it occasionally, but it's just not where my focus lies. My focus really lies on the Cincinnati Reds. I know the Cincinnati Reds pretty well, and I kind of go that narrow focus on that. So I don't even watch other baseball that much.
Well, we'll hope for a Reds Royals World Series for you here in a couple years. Yeah,
it's probably not going to be this year. I'm going to go out on a limb.
Maybe
and say
not.
That's not going to be it this year.
Be pretty good betting odds. Last question for you. Tell us a little bit more about the Joey Votto follow-up story that you put out a couple days ago.
Oh, yeah, that was really fun. That story, we initially published it 2 years ago. I think it was around opening day 2 years ago. And at the time, I remember we were out here, yeah. So I remember texting Joey. 'Cause this there were still COVID regulations then, and texting Joey, and it's like I'd let him know that we were doing this, and that this story, and he's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But then I was like, hey, do you want to chime in? He's like, no, no. Well, then it kind of sat, and it did great numbers. It was a lot of fun. Everybody loved it when it came out, and I thought it was great. And the funny thing is Joey texted me that day something like, you know, some of those are greatly exaggerated, and like I kind of laugh and we talk about it, whatever. Well, at some point last year, Jason Jenks, who kind of worked with me and Rustin Dodd on this story. And Jason has a lot of these oral histories. He's very good. Like I learned so much working with him on this story because there was so much, so much editing. And it's funny. I used to think like, oh, oral history, it's so much easier than writing, and it's not because it's all editing. And it's to find a way to watch how Jenks really weaves a story through those quotes was just really interesting because I would turn in 4, 5, 6 sentence paragraphs and Jenks would get down to the heart of it. I mean, there's some gold that is cut, but it also wasn't needed. It was great editing. I mean, really, we could have done about 3 or 4 of those just with the stuff that we got. Same with the Dusty Baker one. Oh my God, we could print it. Well, there's a lot we couldn't print from what Bronson said, but Bronson alone was worth it on the Dusty Baker story that we did. I think Rustin, Jenks, and I did last year as well before the playoffs. But so anyway, at some point this year or last year, I think it was like July, August, Jenks said, "Hey, we should go back and wants to say anything about this." And so I approached Joey about it, and he was game. And it was actually before a game at Great American Ballpark. We were Zooming. I mean, that's how we'd set it up. So there was me and Jenks and Joey. And we Zoomed, and he gave us all these stories. He has actually postponed a Spanish lesson that he was taking. He had a Zoom Spanish lesson, but he was there in his house in Cincinnati, and it was like desk doing his Zoom with us, and it was just the best time. And I had kind of said, "Hey, what if you wrote some handwritten notes?" And he said, "Well, how would we do that?" And I was like, "I don't know. You got an iPad, you got an Apple Pencil." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." And I sent him a PDF, and he wrote on it. Then it was how to get it from that into the story, which took a little bit more time. I mean, this story, we turned everything in September. And then it was, well, let's see how we can get it designed. When's the best time? And it was this Monday. And the reaction has been phenomenal. Like, heck, you go into the comments and, like, I don't know that I saw a negative one. I mean, maybe from, like, a Phillies fan or something, but like that's like breathing to them. So it was just really cool. And like Joey asked me yesterday, he's like, "Well, how did it do?" I was like, "Well, here are some of the numbers and the metrics." And he's like, "Well, how do you judge?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you how I judge." Monday morning, I'm leaving to go to the ballpark, and as I'm like coming out, Levi pops his head out of his room and just goes, "Dude, that's amazing. That was so good." And I was like, all right, so it's pretty good. It did well because my peers were pretty excited. And like Levi is this mad genius of a writer. So when I can impress Levi, I'm pretty happy.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think the average person probably knows what all goes in behind the scenes to pull something like that off. But nonetheless, it's not a simple ordeal as many probably proclaim it to be. Like many things in life, I'm sure. See, Trent, we don't want to hold you long. I know you got some sleeping music out there, so hopefully you don't have to turn on the sound machine. You can just turn the lights off, close your eyes, and listen to that Arizona rain, and hopefully it stops by tomorrow so you don't have to worry about sitting around waiting on whether or not something's going to get canceled.
Well, it's day off tomorrow, so I'm good either way.
Well, you might want to go outside and do something.
Or just sleep. I don't know. We'll see. Or
All
I'll
right.
probably spend it writing. Who knows?
Fair enough. All right. Well, we appreciate you jumping on here. I'm sure it won't be the last time, and stay safe and enjoy yourself out there.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, Nick. Yeah, just wild what it takes to write a story like that for the most part, and how involved it can become. And for those that don't have The Athletic, it's nothing crazy. I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but it's a pretty good value if you're someone that enjoys good writing and you like sports. Obviously, that's part of the deal as well. So, moving down here to Rising Prospects, there was one thing that he had said earlier in that interview that I'm going to come back to that, as we had progressed and talked, my tiny brain wasn't able to keep up and remember what he had said that sparked a thought. But I'm sure it'll pop up and come to me, and I'll randomly jump to that at some point. But jump us off here with Rising Prospects, Nick.
Yeah, so some really strong performances so far in camp. Obviously, we're talking 5 games. So we don't want to make too big of a deal of anything, and spring training numbers are very fluky. But the one guy that's really, I think, stuck out to me the most among several would be Matt McLean. And it wasn't just the walk-off for the first game. He's had really quality at-bats and plate appearances. I know listening to the radio broadcast today, the Cowboy was so impressed that the Reds, I think, were down 10-2 at the time before this massive, crazy comeback at the end, and talked about how a lot of guys just come up, hacking.
Right.
Hey, you're trying to impress. The game's over, which it actually wasn't. But he took he had a really good plate appearance, drew a walk, and he was really impressed with that. And I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe there's a little bit of growing momentum towards Cincinnati Reds opening day starting shortstop being Matt McLean if Jose Barrero doesn't have a big rest of the spring. He's only 1 for 6 so far. Again, very small, but he's coming off a really, really disappointing 2022 season. So that might be one of the most interesting players to watch is Matt McLean. Can he kind of pull a Jonathan India and be the guy that at the beginning of camp, he really didn't think he was going to make the team, but he forces his way on, and I'm starting to see maybe a tiny bit of momentum that direction.
Well, the one thing that I like most about Matt McLean, when you hear his peers or you hear people talk about them, they'll bring up some attributes from time to time. They'll talk about his skill set that he possesses, but maybe more importantly to me is they just use the term "quote unquote" ball player. And there's been a guy that played in St. Louis for quite some time named Matt Carpenter when the Reds were, right there in 2012, and they were a really good team. And I used to tell people all the time, I said, listen, I like our second baseman, but I also like a second baseman like a Matt Carpenter he's just a gritty player. You know what you're going to get day in, day out. And that's not saying I was pinning him up against Brandon Phillips. I don't want to mix words here, but he reminds me of somewhat of a player that could possibly be like Matt Carpenter, who, for all intents and purposes, you might not say that he has all the tools or skill sets of an Elly De La Cruz. But again, when you talk about reliability, good at bats, consistent at bats, he's shown so far this spring to kind of have that. And there's something to be said about playing with a chip on your shoulder too, Nick. I mean, I'm not saying that he's got a huge one. He was a top draft pick. It's not like he's coming out of the weeds or nothing like that. But when names get thrown around, sometimes McLean's name is towards the end of the sentence, right? And I if there's competitive spirit, which those guys all have, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if he kind of uses that to his own little psyche in my mind. Maybe I'm making something up, but wouldn't shock me a bit if the truth came out long time from now when he did say, yeah, I kind of got tired of hearing about how Elly De La Cruz was going to be the next shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds, and everybody was kind of forgetting about me. That doesn't mean those two guys can't become good teammates together, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of a unique position McLean finds himself in.
Yeah, Yeah, I think we got to remember this guy was just drafted like in 2021. He really got pushed through the system. So he just it's weird. It feels like there's. I hope I'm not forcing it, but it feels like there's just so many parallels with him and Jonathan India being the top draft pick out of the class for the Reds. Maybe being a little bit disappointing in the minor leagues, but is he just gonna kind of get to the majors and just take that big leap? Just feels like there's a lot of parallels here. I'm fascinated to see how his spring pans out. I did make a little interesting opening day lineup here.
You think that you're going to be able to forecast the opening day lineup? And
No. I don't think I'm going to be that lucky.
Well, I'm not saying you're going to be that lucky, but at least we have it right here on screen. We all get to see it. So you were man enough, or whatever term you'd like to use, to put it out there for everyone to see. Walk me through some of the decision making from the standpoint of the lineup. Obviously, first base. Before people call you a Votto hater, you put that you're putting him not in the lineup based off the fact of his health. I presume.
Well, yeah, it's March 1st, and Votto hasn't played in a game. We have no timetable of when he's going to play his first game. At some point, it becomes less and less likely that he's going to be on the opening day roster. So this is assuming he's starting the season on the IL, which it feels like at least at this point, but I wouldn't put it past Joey to have a week and a half spring training and say, yep, I'm ready for opening day, because that could happen too. Assuming that, I'd love to see the Reds, if Votto's not healthy, just give Christian Encarnacion Strand 2-3 weeks, whatever it is, give him a shot, see what he's got, and maybe even with that like communicated to him, hey, look, we're just going to put you on while Joey's on the IL. The plan is to send you back to AAA, so it's not like as much pressure on him. But man, I love what I see from him. He does have some things to work on, mainly plate discipline. Like to see him being a little more patient at the plate, but also not take away his aggressiveness, because I think that's what makes him such a good hitter. But man, a grand slam today. This is a guy that had similar numbers to Ellie De La Cruz last season.
Right.
Obviously, he doesn't play shortstop. He's not going to steal 60 bases. But just as a pure hitter in Great American Ballpark, oh man, I think he could really be a special player. And I'd love to see a lineup like this, because really, you look 1 through 9, and everyone is interesting, at least to me. I look at this: Friedel, India, Fraley, Stevenson, Myers, Encarnacion, Strand, Steer, Benson, McLean. I look at each one of those guys, and I like something about each one of them. There's not a Kevin Newman in there that is fine.
Kevin has a family.
Poor Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm rooting for you.
No, I was a bit. That's a joke. You don't have to be so nice all the time.
No. The last time that I did this, I really pooped on Kyle Farmer, and he just had like a 1,200 OPS in August and really made me look like a fool. So, Kevin, I hope you make me look like a fool again. It would be wonderful. I'm rooting for you. But nonetheless, I think this kind of lineup, I feel like this kind of lineup also, maybe even some of the more pessimistic fans, this might even get them a little bit excited.
It will. I have a quick question from just more of a front office standpoint. This is where my ignorance lies to a small extent of not following this team as closely as you have. How many of these guys are we burning a year of control up if we put them in the opening day lineup? Is Encarnacion Strand's burnt? I know McLean would be burned, right? Is Strand, would he be burned?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're following that plan that I said where you're sending him back down, he'd only have to go back down for 3 weeks, and then he's not being burned. And that's under the current rules, which a lot of people think are going to change. There's also a new stipulation where if you finish in the top 5, hold me to that, of the Rookie of the Year, it changes your it changes your service time. You can also get an extra draft pick if you have a guy. So there's some incentivizing for teams to get their players up good, which is good.
Right.
I want the best players always on the field, but I'm also not naive and going to be like, if it's going to completely burn a year, that, oh, you have to always have the players. You have to also be smart at the same time. There has to be a balance there.
There's a balance.
Yeah, I don't know if
there is a balance there. I mean, Reds and 4 brings up a good point. He said the Rookie of the Year draft picks are greater than the service time manipulation. That's if they become Rookie of the Year candidates, though, right? That is the the catch-22 in a situation like that, to where you bring a guy up, you burn his service time, and then doesn't pan out to where he's not a part of the Rookie of the Year conversations, and for whatever excuse you might have wanted to have of bringing him up. At the end of the day, I'm the type of mindset to where, again, I think if you get too entrenched into the concept of the idea of always worrying about service time, et cetera, there's certain things that are obviously moronic and make perfect sense, right? But I lean towards the idea of playing the best players and living with the result on the back end of that, because you don't know how long you're going to get these guys for. You don't know how well they're going to end up playing. You don't know, quite frankly, the health situation on playing every day or not playing every day. I don't know. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to all this. I think that there could be many people that speculate what the right or wrong answer is. But at the end of the day, when I look at the lineup, the thing that excites me the most is that there are opportunities for these young guys to get at-bats in a big league uniform and allow them to start to build their careers at the major league level, instead of always wondering maybe in their mind whether they can do it or not. And the other thing as well is it can give the front office an opportunity to really assess what they truly do have. Because I've said this time and time again, it's one thing to hit whatever you're going to hit in AA. It's another thing to hit whatever you're going to hit in AAA. But you don't really know. You really don't know until they get to the big league level. And I don't mean to forecast, and I've said this before, I'm not out on Barrero, but if there's not anyone that proves that point more, then I don't know who it is. Barrero is a great example of a guy that played really well at a minor league level, and he struggled for whatever reason when he was sent to the big leagues. I still think that based off his success at the minor league level, it's hard for me to believe that he can't find a way to be some type of useful player. I guess that's the word that comes to mind at the major league level. I know that's not the ultimate goal, is to have just quote-unquote useful players, but I'm not going to sit here and act as if that can't happen to other guys. When the lights get bright, some guys clam up and some guys shine brighter. And you talked about India struggling at the minor league level, comes up his first year in the big leagues and Rookie of the Year. So I'm not going to get into the manipulation of service time as much as others may. Reds and 4 said they're all going to win Rookie of the Year. So if that's going to happen, then let's bring them all up. That'll be perfectly fine by us.
Top 1 through 5. Let's go.
You have on here the big running machine. Here's the thing about that lineup really quickly that's interesting, is that there's a lot of guys on that list that you see that can steal bags, that can take bags. And that's been, in my opinion so far, there's two things that one thing that I always care about. The main thing, at the end of every day, I don't care if one guy went 0 for 5. I don't care if one of our top arms, whether that's Lodolo, Ashcraft, or Green, I don't care if they go out for 1 inning and give up 4 runs. Are they healthy? Do they feel good? I want that. If you ask that question at the end of every spring training day, and the answer is yes, then that's a good day. I'll live with that day. I know that people might think that's a soft approach, or they might think that that's a little bit of a cop-out way of being too optimistic. But at the end of the day, you see it all over the league. Guys are dropping like flies, man. This game's hard to play every single day and stay healthy. So as long as we can continue to avoid the injury bug, and we have some guys that obviously continue to show signs, then it's a great spring training. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing guys play at the big league level and or AAA level that we've been talking about for the last 6 to 9 months to try to brew some optimism. What's been your thought on just the fact that they've decided to, one, not only get athletic guys that can steal bases, but they've decided to do it?
Well, the Reds are 14 for 14 in stolen base attempts.
So they're going to get thrown out their very next attempt. That's a good.
Hey, no, I said 11 for 11 on the podcast yesterday, so I
Okay.
didn't jinx them. I didn't jinx them here on Wednesday, so they were 3 for 3 today. No, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a fun brand of baseball, if it's anything else. For younger fans, for older fans, I think everyone who doesn't love a team that runs. I think it's great. I love that the Reds are trying this spring to see if they can exploit some of these rules. Like I think you pointed out, you caught something I didn't catch with India and the pitch clock early in that game, timing that up. Hopefully, maybe Nick Kroll in the front office saw a little bit into the future with the shift changes and it being a little bit easier to steal bags. That hey, we're going to be ahead of the curve, get a more athletic team, and really, take advantage of it. So, nonetheless, a team that leads the league in stolen bases, that wins 70 games is probably a lot more entertaining than a team that wins 70 games that never steals a base. So at least you have that going for you.
Yeah. Evan asked the question, are you guys investing in the stock of CES for opening day? Nick is. Nick definitely is.
I'm dreaming.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I think again, it comes down to, and I could be completely wrong on this, and I would love to be corrected, but I think it comes down to service manipulation at the end of the day. I really do. I think that this front office is saying, I know it can be exciting. I know that we probably theoretically could bring a few of these guys up to begin the year and start them on opening day. And you have that one big day in Cincinnati that people care about more in this city than other franchises. But once that day's over, how much of an impact or how much does it really mean for them to play at the beginning of the year instead of waiting that, whatever it is, I don't know the exact number of days. It's a 30 days, 45 days that they got to wait, Nick.
I don't know. It usually pans out to the first week in May. I will push back a little bit on that, though, because the Reds, obviously, it was pretty clear they did that with Senzel. They'll never admit it, which I don't think it mattered because I don't think he
Which brings me to my point before. I mean, does this Senzel, does it really matter?
But since then, you have Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. Those were all on opening day rosters. They didn't push any of them back. So I used to be more gung-ho on, you got to be smart in service time. There's just so many cases across the league where it ends up not mattering, or you tick off a guy that you didn't need to, like Chris Bryant. I think I don't see as much benefit to it. Maybe in the case of like an Ellie De La Cruz, if you're on the fence and you have a guy that you think, man, this guy might be way too expensive for us.
Right.
Maybe you think a little bit more about that. But a guy like Christian Encarnacion, as much as I love him, I don't know if I'm worrying about 6 years from now, right now, versus just getting him the experience and seeing what you got. Because as I've said before, the worst thing that could happen this year is you get to the end of the year and you don't know what you have. You're kind of like, well, we kind of like that guy. We kind of like that guy. That guy's probably, you don't want to be like that at the end of the year. I think that's the worst case scenario more than just about any wins-loss result for the Reds this season.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, they're gonna tip their hand pretty clearly on whether they're gonna do the service manipulation or not. And someone, let me get the actual person's name right so I don't mess this up. There was someone that said, Alex Wallace asked thoughts on spreading out the big prospects, obviously manipulation of the service time, so their contracts don't all come at the same time. I don't know if that's as big of a deal to me. I don't know. I get the concept of that, but my only thought on that is that most of these guys are going to get deals before maybe their service time is completely up anyways, because I think you as a franchise have a crack at it before all of the other teams do to be able to try to get a deal done. So if I'm just thinking to myself that if you got a guy like maybe not Ellie because he comes with so much hype, but let's say McLean starts playing really, really well, and he's 3 years in, and he's a really solid player. He still has 2 more years of service time underneath the Reds' belt. I think the Reds could come to him and say, listen, we're willing to sign you to a long-term deal. You still got 2 years left. Anything can happen here. Injuries can happen. Something could happen. You could have 2 really bad years or down years, and all of a sudden, you might not be as big of a free agent as you thought you were going to be. Now, they're not going to say that way. But in the back of every single player's mind is, as you know, they're going to take the bag if they get the opportunity to, and you're going to have a little bit of an edge. So I don't know how many of these guys truly are even going to get to the end of their service time if we get down to it. It just all comes down to how many of these guys are going to be able to play within the next 3 to 4 years, and whether or not that window looks clean and clear to be able to make a run. And hopefully, Kroll has done an incredible job for the most part. I'm not going to say he's perfect because nobody is, and you've heard what I've said before about the signing just last year, and don't know why I can't think of it. Was it Malley or whoever it was? It just felt weird.
Mike Minor.
Minor, thank you. It just felt weird and stupid, and he's the general manager, so I get that people were arguing that was probably the ownership coming into his office and saying, "Hey, we got a major problem. Somebody said something really stupid, or what? So we're not in a very good position with our fan base. Go fix it." Even if that was the case, I'm still going to put a little blame on Nick. So maybe that's fair or unfair. I don't know. I don't want the guy to get all of the perfect. I don't know what the term would be. I don't want him to get clean bill of health all the time, Nick. We got to be somewhat critical of Krall, but I like him, and I like him a lot because he's stuck to a plan, and at least he said it out loud. When that was the one thing that Trent said that stuck out to me. See, I told you it would come back. It's nice to hear that he told Trent that, and he said that out loud. I know that that's one thing to say, maybe somewhat in a public forum, but to actually regurgitate that into a private space, I think it proves how much he cares about sticking to a plan and not doing what they did, which was be halfway in and halfway out on this whole quote unquote rebuild, and then you're not in a rebuild. And as much as the fan base might at times get frustrated about this ownership group not going out and spending money, I will be the first to admit and put my hand up and say maybe I'm a loser for saying this out loud. But they went out and spent some damn money, and they tried to, and COVID burned their ass, and it burned them bad. I don't care what anybody says. They went out and signed Moustakas, and they went out and signed Castellanos. Those are two pretty damn good signings, if you want my opinion, as a free agent. They didn't all pan out. Nick, obviously Moustakas was about as valuable as a boat anchor, playing third base or wherever he decided he wanted to play when he was in the lineup. But at the end of the day, my point is I think that I truly think, if you want some optimism, they are going to spend money, Nick, if they have the opportunity the next time the playoffs and or a push arises. I feel incredibly confident about that. I do knock them a little bit on not going out and trying to fix that or shore up that bullpen not too far back. I don't know how many years that was, but nonetheless, that's my take, and that'll be the last take I have on the situation of whether we're going to spend money or not.
Yeah, I think my biggest criticism of ownership is not how much they've spent, because I think as a small market team, they've spent relatively competitive with everyone else. It's that they haven't stuck to a plan over the years. It's that they've tried to be this, they've tried to be that. They didn't, they rebuilt, but they waited too long to trade Johnny Cueto. They waited too long to trade Jay Bruce, go down the list.
Scooter Gennett.
You traded Luis Castillo at his peak value. You traded Tyler Mahle at his peak value. You traded Jesse Winker definitely at his peak value. Now maybe you missed on Suarez, but
Suarez needed
overall,
a new, really, really quickly. I'm not going to cut you off. I think Suarez needed a new home. You can say whatever you want about the guy. He went out there, he played incredibly well in Seattle, and I'm happy for him. Just because a guy plays for your organization and he's struggling and he's struggling and he's struggling, and you quote unquote give up on him, Nick, I don't believe in that. When a guy gets shipped away, there's a new bill of health. There's a new sign of life. Sonny Gray is a perfect example of that. We can't get mad when we send a guy out that struggles really bad in our franchise and he starts to play better, and then on the other end, not give heaps of praise when we have a guy like Sonny Gray that comes along and he flips the script. So, not to cut you off, Nick, but there's going to be times in this show where things that I hear that are perpetuated in my ears, I get tired of hearing it. I got to let the people know how I feel.
Yeah, I love Suarez. Easily one of my favorite Reds of all time to watch and to root for. So it was great to see him, have his resurgent year last year. Fascinated to see what he'll do this year. He's an interesting player to watch. But yeah,
starting pitching, which I haven't got a chance to see these guys much. Spring training wise, clearly they're. Every day is not televised, and sometimes, unfortunately, and I don't know if they can get this fixed, and maybe I'm just naive to it. I can't go back and watch these games on MLB TV. They're there, and then they're gone. Maybe they stick around somewhere, but they're hidden to me. I can't figure out where to find them if a game If a game is passed and then it's gone, YouTube TV has really done a number on my brain when it comes to what I expect from a cable service and or a television service. So I haven't got a chance to see those guys throw open, hand up. Haven't seen it, but they're whatever 1 or 2 innings they threw haven't looked the greatest. But like I said before, I'm not a slight bit concerned about any of it, as long as they're healthy. That's what I care about most. But your thoughts on the rotation? I think that you have you got yourself the opening. I guess that would be the start of the season.
I got what
rotation.
I would like.
You got what you would like.
I got what
you
I
ready
would
for
like.
it?
Yeah, I'm
Let's
ready
see what
for
you
it.
got.
Here you go.
Is this in order?
Said,
I'm going to hold you to this. Is this in order? Are you starting Hunter Green
Ooh.
opening day? I mean, where are we at here? Being honest, but let's make this a little more fun. There's only one decision that you're making here.
I think Lodolo deserves it more, but I think Hunter Green will be the one starting. I think it's going to be hard not to give him the ball on opening day, the excitement he brings, all that kind of stuff. I really, though, this is not to be a cop-out, but these two guys where they are, I really don't care which one starts opening day. I'd be excited for either one. But the guy I really want to see Brandon Williamson take that 5 spot this spring. That's the guy I want to see him in that rotation to start the year. I just think he makes this rotation 1 through 5 a lot more interesting. I think it gives this rotation a lot more upside. Nothing against Luis Sessa, Connor Overton, Chase Anderson. Like, they're not terrible pitchers. There's something with them. They all had decent moments last year, but they're not the top 100 prospect that Brandon Williamson was just as recent as earlier last year. I want to see him take that 5 spot. So if he does, I'm really excited about this rotation. I mean, I am. I think it's good. Now, a couple of these guys get hurt. That's my biggest concern is
Sure,
I don't see the immediate.
Everyone.
I don't see the immediate depth here. Whereas even the lineup that's not maybe great, I feel like there's like a top prospect that you could call up, or there's multiple different guys that can kind of fill some of those holes. Here, I think in this year, with Connor Phillips not really probably being ready and some of the other guys, that's where I think the season could really, if it was to go off the rails, would be because of starting pitching injuries.
There's not a ton of depth there. Obviously, is no offense to Luis Sessa, but when his name is hovering right around the borderline of being in that rotation, and that's nothing against him. He's one of the bright spots of guys that came over at the deadline. But nonetheless, really quickly, how much? This is more of a joke than anything. How much heat would David Bell take if he just said they were going to do a pin day on opening day? They're just everybody's going to throw. We're just going to throw an inning apiece. Well, what do you think? What do you think the thoughts on that would be if that came out on opening day that we're going to have a pin day? We're just going to let it rip.
Well, if you're doing 3 from Green, 3 from Lodolo, and 3 from Ashcraft, sure, that's fine. but if you're getting if you're getting like an inning and a third for Fernando Cruz, he's your opener. That might be a little rough.
Let's throw San Martin out there as a starter. See how that.
Hey, I love Reaver. He was great. He was great as a reliever. He's one of the more fun players to root for sure.
All right, we'll jump off that graphic in. Lastly here, position battles. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, does it? I don't want to say it doesn't matter, and I don't want to sound like this guy that's not trying to hype up, what it looks like on opening day, but I'm just in the situation where at this point, I hope to see a lot of these guys for extended periods of time and let them figure it out themselves, And I'm still open to the idea of we talk about service time. Listen, I know I'm going to get pitchforks thrown at me for saying this out loud, But I'm still open to the idea of letting Barrero, even if he stinks it up in this spring training, and he hasn't got off to the start that many probably hoped. But I'm still open to the idea of saying, listen, you got 40 days to figure this out. What does it look like? Do you think you can make it or not? And live with the result, because at the end of this year, towards the trade deadline, I'm very hopeful that we find ourselves in a position where Will Myers hitting like 340. He's not going to be, but Will Myers hitting like 340, and he's in the NL MVP race, and we get to deal him away and get some prospects back for him, and then hear half the fan base completely cry about how we didn't try to re-sign him. That'll definitely be part of that conversation. But I guess my main point is do you put a lot of stock in these position battles? Do you think that it's significantly important who wins the job on opening day versus who doesn't?
No, I mean, I think you're right. Again, it's all about how many at bats do they get at the end of the year? Does it matter if they're in April or if they're in September? Yeah, we talked about some of them. I don't want to belabor it, but I mean, shortstops, I think the most interesting. I had said outfield before, but I think Benson's really kind of taken that center field by the horns, and seems like he's well in line, especially with Senzel not going to be ready for opening day. So I think shortstop's the one I'm really interested in. I'm not against Barrero getting it to start the year if they think that McLean can benefit from going down. But I also think there could be a flip side of that. Could Barrero benefit from a prospect passing him? Could that be like, oh, hey, I just got passed by a guy that was in Double-A all last year. I had made it up to the big leagues 2 years ago. Could sending him down and having him start the year at Triple-A, could that maybe, I don't know, motivate him? You have to know these guys and what makes them tick and their psychology and all those kind of things more so than, all the analytical numbers that I like to look at. But I could see it maybe being a benefit. So they're going to have to weigh all those options. But I'm interested in the shortstop. I'm just getting more and more fascinated every day by Matt McLean. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into him having a shot at the opening day roster. But man, I want it. I want it, Trace.
I completely understand, Nick. I think I've jumped on the bandwagon of Strand. And I mean, is it Encarnacion Strand? We got all these guys that got like 9 different names, I mean, no offense, but
CES.
Yeah, CES, and then we got ELDC. It's going to be like the damn, what is actually the correct term for when you use 3 or 4 letters to shorten something? I don't know what the actual real definition. Maybe I'll figure that out. But that seems like what half our team is anymore. The old guard of having the Pete Roses of the world. It's like a very straightforward, simple name. Is anybody acronym? Thank you, chat. That is, I think that's the right term. I don't know if that's like the actual term I was thinking of, but that's a term that probably works. And hell, it might be the actual thing that I was thinking of, because half the time I don't even know what I'm thinking. Here's a fun thing. I was asking the chat, do they have anything fun to talk about? I mean, we're going to sit here and are we going to talk about who's going to position battle for opening day for the Cincinnati Reds, when at the end of the day, let's all just say a little small prayer that all of these guys we're talking about get, at least a couple hundred at bats at the big league level, and if not more than that, and we start to have an idea at the end of this year what our identity is, who we can somewhat start to rely on and who we can't. But one thing I was thinking of the other day, this wasn't just the other day, this has been for a long time, this thing's been brewing for quite some time, is the Big Red Machine. I love the Big Red Machine, not as much as everyone, I guess, but this is just a thought for the chat. How long are we going to hold on to these guys for as a franchise? I mean, it's like every single weekend when I was in high school, and now that I've gotten in college, and my kids are getting to be the point where they can go down to opening day, it's like bobbleheads. Half the time are for the Big Red Machine, and half the time they're for current players. At what point does the marketing team at the Cincinnati Reds facility say to themselves, we can't really do this anymore? Like, we gotta have like something else to cheer about, per se, or to bring people in for. And it doesn't mean that I think the marketing team's doing a bad job or nothing like that. It's just, it becomes nauseating having to hear about the Big Red Machine time and time again. And it's like, well, they're not like the Big Red Machine. This team, they don't even have one guy that could sit on the bench for the Big Red Machine. I don't mean to come off as like the guy that's just not appreciative of who they were and what they are. I never got the chance to see them play, obviously. But maybe I'm the only person, and again, I'm not trying to hate on the Big Red Machine. It's not their fault that everybody talks about them. But it's like, is anyone else kind of tired of that? Can we just move on to a certain extent? Maybe once a year we bring up the Big Red Machine. But it seems like we got posters, we got jerseys, we got a Hall of Fame day. We bring some guys back every single year for the parade. We got one of them, it feels like. Maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but my gosh, I guess I'm ready for my own type of Big Red Machine, which is, I don't even know if that's, I don't want to make it seem like we need to get a Big Red Machine. I know they're one of the historically best teams that have ever played Major League Baseball. I'm not an idiot in thinking that we should get one of those soon, Nick, but I guess I'm just like so nauseated. I'm so tired by it that I haven't even hung up. I got a signed poster or a picture framed that I kind of fleeced a merchandising store of one time. I actually didn't steal it, to be clear, but my friend was working there. It was a 50% off holiday special, Nick, and he got a 60% discount as being an employee. So I asked him, I said, hey, do I get 50% off? And then if you buy it, you get 60% off the 50% off. And he's like, I don't know. I'm going to probably be out of here in a week, so I'll give it to you anyway. So I bought like a $1,500 poster that every Big Red Machine member signed. I haven't hung it up. Maybe that's bad mojo. I'll have to hang it up somewhere around here so you can see it. I'm worried my kids will break it. But I haven't hung it up largely because I'm just like, I'm not hanging that thing up until we get a playoff series win. Is that fair, or is that being too harsh?
No, I'm with you. It's time we celebrate Hamilton's own Mark Lewis more.
Okay, yeah.
In the moment that he had in 1995, I think that's what we need to be celebrating more at this point than the Big Red Machine.
Right. All right. I'm looking to see if we have any final questions in the chat before we call tonight. Unless you got some big major topic you want to discuss, Nick.
I think we got it all. I was bad. I didn't have the chat up, so sorry if I missed anything. I got to be better prepared next time.
This is a piping hot take. I'm not even trying to make it that. I'm just so tired of hearing about it. When's the next show, Casey? He's as usual trying to let us know what we're supposed to be doing at the end of these shows and making sure people tune back in again. I don't know if we have an exact time on when the next show will be. Obviously, spring training's not going to be like it will during the regular season. Regular season, as I've said before, we're going to try to do this after every single game. Spring training's a little different. Not as much maybe to talk about.
We will have podcasts every day, though.
But we do have a podcast every day. And if you haven't seen it or heard it, which I'm assuming if you're chat that you have, but if you have not heard it, it is Chatterbox Reds. Please download it. Rate it, give it a review. Nick has done an unbelievable job of doing that on a daily basis. I will help him out at some point. I know he probably laughs and doesn't believe me, but I will. Hold me to that, Nick. I will help you out. I promise. You're not going to have to do that all 195 times or whatever it would be. But if you haven't seen it, it's gotten to number 11 in the Apple Baseball United States podcast. We're right behind, I think, we're not right behind Baseball is Dead. Or are we right behind Baseball is Dead? I'm not sure who we're right behind. But nonetheless, the fact that we have a single team podcast that has gotten that far up into the rankings, will it stay there forever? I don't know. But I am asking you, please, for all intents and purposes, if you don't mind, please go on there and subscribe to it. Give us a nice review. Rate the show. Alex Wallace asked the question of what are the other Chatterbox shows. I think we're in a position now where everyone that's on the chat, Nick, is just telling me how I should do my job at the end of this thing. So, Nick, what other shows do we have? I don't want to sound like I'm sitting here spewing out my own state-run media agenda. What other shows do you like, Nick, that Chatterbox does?
Well, we have Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon. Great interview today with Chris Welsh. If you missed it, I believe you guys spliced it up just as an interview on YouTube on the Chatterbox page. So check that out. Really good interview. Chris really told a little bit more about his life story, not something we hear all the time. And then the rebound rundown, the inspiration for the style of podcast that we do, your daily college basketball show Monday through Friday. Paul Fritcher just does the absolute best job. It needs to be your first listen every day. Well, of course, after Chatterbox Reds, whichever one you want to do. Give Paul the first listen for March. This is March, and then give me the first listen in April, or Trace, or whoever else we have on.
Fair. And if you have not listened to the Rebound Rundown, I will tell you, if you're going to listen to any show, you listen to the one today because it fired me up on the way to work. And Paul made me laugh out loud. I almost spit out my coffee when I was walking or driving.
Jim Root.
I'm not even going to ruin what he said or how he even tried to explain what he was trying to explain. I don't even know if he was trying to do it as a joke. I don't think he was doing it as a joke, which is why it was more funny. Again, I'm not going to ruin it. You need to go listen to it for yourself, but it's towards the beginning of the show. First of all, the shows are only 10 minutes long anyway, so it's not like you got to wait forever to get to that point. But nonetheless, we're going to continue to try to push content as much as we possibly can here at Chatterbox. We appreciate everybody jumping on here. It's 10:35 at night, and there's 35 plus concurrent viewers. And at the end of the day, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I know Nick feels the same way, but we're in a position at Chatterbox where we're a small company, and we're based in Cincinnati. We care about Cincinnati sports, and we're continue to try to do a good job and make people find a place that they can go to and get reliable content on a daily basis. And hopefully you continue to give us a shot, and we find more advertisers. We can hire more talented people, and when we get more talented people, makes more talented content. And then this whole thing keeps making a nice, beautiful circle of life cycle. So until next time, I want you to enjoy yourself. And at the end of every spring training day, you say to yourself, did anybody get hurt? And does everybody feel good? And if those two answers are yes, I don't give a damn what happened in the game. It is irrelevant to me. It is a good day. And until then, until next time, take care, everybody.